My name is David Johnson. I'm a 2012 Great Rivers recipient. For the show, I'm organizing a kind of photo installation of images taken from the formal spaces of the museum, the functional spaces of the museum, the offices, and the kind of more foundation supportive spaces of board members' homes. Thinking that there would be kind of an interesting dialogue between these kind of domestic space and the gallery space and the space of the office. So when thinking about this project, normally it's been kind of depending on how much access I get. You'll see images that were taken within the gallery space, is this really kind of formal part of the museum. I was able to spend several hours in several shoots to get it together, to where with board members' homes, I'd only get about 3 hours per home, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit less, to try and find images that were interesting. So there is a little bit more of a methodical way of photographing and going through and moving through the museum space and reacting to kind of the blank walls during an installation or whatnot, or to where working on the board members' homes was very much quickly shooting and moving and trying to get as much scope or vision of this kind of one house, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to come back to where at the museum I was able to come back and kind of freely move about the space. The museum images are a lot more kind of formal and a little bit more minimalistic. Board members' homes are a little bit more either very abstract or fairly formal, but dealing with objects. So there's a lot more color involved. And I really like that palette between the museum's grays and whites and a little bit off-whites and a little bit blue within different museum space depending on the lighting, and putting that next to a really colorful board member or domestic situation, and kind of using those objects that may not even be art objects, but viewing them as art objects within this kind of museum. It looks like a minimalistic show with a lot of personality, is one way to kind of think about it. I feel like when a viewer goes into the museum space, there's this, they're kind of floating above the actual architecture that they're in, and they're only really in there for the artwork, not paying attention to kind of the way that the museum moves, and that there are some really beautiful cracks in the wall that, and where it's leaked, like there's a nice patina even though it's a fairly new building. And seeing the way that the light plays within kind of the institution. Quality of light, I've been able to photograph the museum at night when it's just artificial lighting, or right in the morning when there's really bright light coming through the kind of the atrium, or coming from certain skylights in the museum, and those really kind of playing a major significant role within how you navigate the space, or also how the film sees the space. When I'm photographing the space, I'm using a large format 4x5 field camera. So it's not like digital photography. It takes me a good 20-30 minutes to kind of set up an image and make sure that everything's right. So it slows me down as far as like an artistic practice. Putting these three bodies, or three kind of understandings of space between gallery space, office space, and domestic space has been really interesting, because generally in the earlier, I've only worked with one kind of part, to where now I'm building kind of this tripod of understanding this institution. The way that I've been negotiating all these images is kind of dealing with the poetics of it, of almost trying to build a song, and which image plays with kind of which note, and does it need to be really minimal and bass, or can it be like a high, colorful type of note? I feel like each individual that comes into the show is going to come out with their own understanding and their own kind of likes and dislikes. I'm asking them to navigate the show that's about the building that they're in, and maybe bring in different kind of thoughts that they had never thought about, and allowing for the viewer to like make comparisons that maybe I don't even see as the artist. I think is, once I get to put it on the wall, I can walk away. People start making up their own kind of arguments or stories, which I think is amazingly interesting.